Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is 8 a.m. on the East Coast, 5 a.m. out west. It is Wednesday, March 13th, and let's right away bring in Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. I have Willie with me, but I'll start things out. I'd like to try something different because you're one of the few candidates with a really significant, clear message that you have lived throughout your life, and you have worked for the same issues, on the same issues, since you were in college and graduate school. And I love that. So I want to ask you some questions about other issues that you would confront as president. Rapid fire.
Okay.
So just your gut on these core things. So as a parent, how much sympathy would you have for these parents who are embroiled in this alleged cheating scandal?
Zero.
Zero. Okay. Would President Warren ground the 737 MAX 8 right now?
Yes.
Absolutely. Is Brexit good for the U.S. and why?
No.
Why?
Because having our close ally, Great Britain, in such economic turmoil is not helpful to us. We need our allies to be strong.
How would President Elizabeth Warren neutralize the North Korean nuclear and missile programs when the last four presidents have not been able to do so?
Boy, it is a tough one, and we just have to start out by acknowledging that. But the first thing you do is you don't head off to a summit without doing your homework. The tough part has got to be sitting down with the North Koreans, and it's the painstaking work of diplomacy, where you figure out what it is that they need, what it is that we can supply, how many allies we can pull into this to bring pressure on North Korea. The idea of simply giving away to North Korea what they want, which is the big photo op with the President of the United States, and get the President of the United States to say what China has always wanted them to say about how provocative it is that we're doing military exercises with our allies, the South Koreans and the Japanese. It's just giving things up without getting anything in return. I guarantee that's not a path to success.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that there was a lot of advance work for these summits.
You know, and that's the problem. You can't walk into these things and somehow think that a personality and eye to eye and sending love letters is going to take care of it. It's hard work.
Is Saudi Arabia an ally of the United States?
Well, it is officially an ally of the United States, but it is an ally where I think we really have to keep pushing on this relationship. Right now, it's engaged in a war in Yemen that the United States has gotten itself deeply threaded into without any authorization from Congress. In addition, the killing of a journalist is just a reminder that Saudi Arabia is a government right now that does not believe in accountability. You know, that's the job of the journalists, is to hold officials accountable. And they wipe one out, and so far, the response of the Trump administration has been nothing.
So what would be your public position on Saudi Arabia right now? What would you be saying and telegraphing to?
So it's both halves. The killing of Khashoggi is absolutely unacceptable. There needs to be some accountability in the government for that. But the second would also be to say no on Yemen. We are not going to supply arms. We're not going to be helpful for them for a war in Yemen. Yemen is now one of the biggest man-made humanitarian crises of the last half century. And the United States plays a role in this through its ally, Saudi Arabia. For a long time, we were actually helping them pick bombing sites, even. We refueled their airplanes. We've sold them the weapons. We're working hand in glove with them in a war we have no business being part of.
Can you name 1, 2, or 3 Pentagon programs that you think could be eliminated?
That's an interesting.
That's a trigger.
Yeah, it is, and I have to think about what the programs are. But can I describe it this way and tell you what the range is? We have to stop the Pentagon from building the best possible 20th century military and urge the Pentagon over to the 21st century military. And here's my example of that. A lot of new tech, a lot of new cyber. The 21st century threats and the 21st century responses are not places where a 20th century military has real strength. It's much more about conventional weapons and large armies and so on, and, you know, the ability to engage in lots of shooting wars around the world. And the problem, kind of coherent problem at the Pentagon, is that there's always somebody in the room to defend an existing program. No matter how old it is, no matter how much circumstances have changed, somebody is at the head of that program. Somebody hands out the dollars to the defense industry that supports that program. There's rarely somebody in the room for the next idea, for the place we need to be. And yet, to have an effective military, we got to be on the front edge, not the back edge of development. So I can tell you where I'd spend a lot more money. It's only a very small part of the Pentagon budget, is on research, is on development, is on cyber. That's the place we've got to get the Pentagon more focused in that direction.
Back to rapid fire. What
Sure.
has Donald Trump done that you think could be considered impeachable?
Oh, come on now. No, but here's my rule on this one.
Okay.
We're about to get the Mueller report, and
Back up.
we have a lot of other information. Let's wait until we've got the Mueller report, combine it with everything else we've seen, then we'll know.
So
what
you
to
agree
do.
with Nancy Pelosi's approach on this?
I'm not sure where Nancy is.
She
when
just said he's
says-
not worth it at this point.
No.
It's so divisive.
That's not the point. What I see is that the Mueller report is coming. Let's all take a look at the Mueller report, and when the Mueller report comes, we'll know exactly what to do.
What was wrong, if anything, with the statements that Representative Ilhan Omar made about Israel?
You know, the way I see it is that we are a great deliberative body in Congress, and it is important for us to be able to debate issues, to do so respectfully. Any anti-Semitism or Islamophobia should be called out and condemned, but we should encourage
So
our
what
members.
she said were tropes and they were not
Well,
worth...
when she's doing that, then that's a problem. But here's the part I really want to make strongly.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to be a place that can have robust discussion. Not anti-Semitism, not Islamophobia, but robust discussion. And that's what we need to have.
What is it about Bernie Sanders that makes him so popular with progressives?
You know, because he gets out and fights for what he believes in. Bernie and I have been friends.
Bernie's at the top of the
forever
list in
and
these
ever.
polls right now,
That's
except for
right.
Biden if he runs.
That's right. But, you know, I've been friends with Bernie from long, long before I ever ended up in politics. And Bernie's out there fighting for what he believes in. And I think that means a lot to people.
All right, two more. Is Mike Pence an honorable man?
No.
Okay. Would you like to expound upon that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyone who engages in the kind of homophobia and attacks on people who are different from himself is not an honorable person. That's not what honorable people do.
Should Bill Clinton have left office after having an affair with a much younger staffer in the White House?
I don't know. I can't go back and litigate the 1990s. That one is beyond.
Did the 1990s get us here, though, to an extent?
Of course it did. But I don't have the time machine to go back and change the 90s. All I can do is change this world going forward.
Okay, Willie Geist, you can take over from here.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.